What's up, everybody? It's another episode of Fun and Truth in Black and White with Pat and Jay. I'm Jay.
I am Pat. What is up, Earth? What's up, world?
What's up, people? What's up, people? So, Pat, we had an incredible episode last week. Lots and lots of feedback, lots of responses, lots of reactions, and we're going to follow up that episode next week. But tonight, we've decided to take a different format. No fun, all truth. What are we talking about, man?
First, let me just piggyback on what you said. We read every email, and we get so much feedback weekly that for us to say that this is the most all-inclusive, passionate feedback we've ever received, it's going to be so much fun, and we have a great guest lined up for next week. Now, on to today's episode. The title, No Fun, All Truth. What we're talking about is what's going on in the world. You know, back in the spring, we recorded an episode that was so emotional for us that we did not even publish the episode in the wake of the George Floyd murder and as the headline, but a slew of other incidents. Most recently, Jacob Blake shot 7 times in the back in front of his children. And what I really want to start with is, I speak to a lot of people. I mean, doing this show and in my everyday life, I speak to people all the time, of all backgrounds. A lot of people, friends, neighbors, strangers, fans of the show, say the following to me. Why did he run? He must have a death wish. Is he suicidal? I have friends who are police officers telling me the same thing. And then others are talking about there was a warrant out for his arrest and speaking to his character. And there's something that I have to say, which is so simple, but I feel like this is getting lost. Black people don't like criminals either. Black people don't think that bad black people shouldn't be punished, or that black criminals shouldn't go to jail. No one thinks that. We're just saying, do they have to be murdered? The whole thing of what's he up to, and that's always the premise. It's always like when a black person gets shot and injured or murdered, the thing is, well, what was he doing? It doesn't matter. The person can be a drug kingpin. Let me describe the worst person in the world. Anybody who knows me, listens to the show, knows I hate pedophiles more than anything in the world, right? Nothing's worse to me. A pedophile, the garbage, a vomit guy, the worst person in the world. I don't get to make the call whether they live or die, right? So what I'm saying is, forget character. Why are we talking about why did he run? So there's cops and there's the guy that ran. The cops are the ones carrying a lethal weapon who are trained for these scenarios. You should be asking why they shoot him 7 times. So you can't shoot the tires to the car. You can't shoot him in his leg. Unless he's Superman, you shoot him in the limbs, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to pick the car up and, so what I want to talk about is the context of it all, because I don't even care what he might have had on his record. It doesn't matter. 7 times shot in the back. Who do you think he is? The Incredible Hulk? It doesn't make any sense. And the fact that it's a natural and automatic reaction for the officers to do that is a problem. And the fact that it's a natural and automatic reaction for citizens to try to find understanding in it is a problem. And the last thing I'm going to say, if a white male, a white person, Spanish person, Asian person, Indian person, if an alien got shot in the back 7 times in that scenario by a person who looked just like me, and for those who don't know, I'm Black, I would have an issue with it. It's not okay. You notice I'm not even getting into the depth of racial systemic. No, I'm on the surface. Let's start there. An unarmed person running away that did not pose a threat was shot 7 times in the back by people who were trained to know what to do in these situations. Now, after we talk about that, sure, we can get into everything else, like the fact that his kids are scarred for life. But Jay, I'll stop there and I'll pass the ball to you.
All right, so I'm going to start with the fact that only a coward shoots someone in the back. That's first. And we don't have to go any further than that on that topic. But what I'm going to bring up, Pat, is the fact that if you remember a couple of years ago, there was a dentist or a doctor, very successful guy from Minnesota, who was literally lambasted on the internet for shooting a lion that he paid to hunt. He spent like 50 or 100 or 200,000. I don't remember what the number was, but he paid to go on this safari excursion where he got to shoot a lion. And it just so happened that it was the old lion of the village, like all the other lions looked up to, but the, people he paid apparently said that, it was past this guy's time. So, it was okay for him to hunt the lion and shoot it. And again, this guy paid for this privilege to go and shoot a lion. The entire world was up in, like outrage about the fact that he killed that lion. Yet people are upset because Black people are angry over the fact that a Black man was shot in the back, when Black men are getting shot nearly every day now by law enforcement, to the degree that we're beyond numb. When we did the George Floyd episode, the choice not to publish that episode was because of the emotional rage. And we felt that it wasn't fair to our listeners. We were just venting. And so we decided, you know what, we'll save that episode. And if we ever decide to air it, it'll be under a different context. But in this case, I think that what has happened since George Floyd is that, you've had this entire movement. You've had a summer with, protests and demonstrations. There was civil disobedience here in New York the entire month of June, where they were setting off fireworks and M80s, to protest, law enforcement. There are all sorts of things that have changed because of the pandemic and because of, the fact that it's an election year and people want something to change. But at the same time, again, I go back to the fact that there was more social outrage over a lion being killed. That's, to me, such an appalling fact because, again, it's an animal versus a human being. And I'm not saying the lion isn't important. But what I am saying is that as human beings, if we don't take each other for the value that we are to each other, and all of us are valuable, regardless of what you think of your fellow human being. They're a human being. They are exactly like you. They're not an alien. They're not a lion. And regardless of skin color, our DNA as a collective, as a species, is more similar than anything else on this earth. So to disregard each other to the level that we have decided to disregard each other at this point in time is what I think that we really need to stop and reflect on. And I'm going to hand it back to you on this point, Pat, is that I think the other thing that people really are losing any type of reality to is the fact that Amadou Diallo was shot nearly 30 years ago, 41 times by police officers for holding up a wallet. He was going to show his ID. And they said, oh, well, it was a dark hallway or, staircase, whatever it was. He was in the entrance of a building. And we bought that as a somewhat plausible, like, oh, well, they couldn't see what he was holding up. They shot him 41 times. Now, this guy, again, was running away unarmed. What is the need to shoot him in the first place? What, you're too fat, you can't chase him down? You can't figure out, okay, this guy's, not going to get away, or however far he gets, we're going to be able to get him. But you're lazy, so you decide that the easier thing to do is just to shoot him. Was he really a menace to society that much that you needed to take him down? Did he have claws, fangs, something supernatural that we don't know about? So I think that, that is another factor here, is why is it becoming so commonplace when these men are not armed? These men are not, superhuman. They are just human beings like the rest of us. But for some reason, their lives are more acceptable to take. And they're more acceptable to take not because they're, any better or any worse, but because, again, it's acceptable to disregard them compared to everybody else, it seems.
So, timing, well, the expression timing is everything, but you probably didn't mean this literally, but the Diallo thing, when you say we bought that, the community was just as outraged. No one bought it. However, the timing, it's like a pressure cooker. And behind closed doors, I heard it mentioned in some hip hop songs, but there was a lot of tears shed. And in conversations, you see, when Black people heard that story, and then in other stories like Aubrey jogging in Atlanta, Georgia, and hunted down by a father and son combo, it's one thing when someone gets killed and they're like doing high risk behavior, and it's still not okay. But you're engaging in something illegal. You were armed. There's all these things that you put yourself in harm's way. It's still wrong, but human nature, a person, even a Black person, is like, well, you increase the probability of such and such happening to you by breaking the law and by doing X, Y, and Z. And again, I gotta stress it, that's still a problem. That's not okay. But oftentimes, people are not engaging in any high-risk behavior and not making it home to see their loved ones. So when you see somebody pulling out a wallet, you can't help but think to yourself, man, I pull out my wallet every day. I stand in a dark alley or in a driveway or in a foyer or a lobby, and I reach in my wallet every day. This could be me. Okay, so that it's very, very, very painful. Now, it might not have been as big of an outcry and as many protests, but what happens, you can get numb and you can get stunned. So let's fast forward 30 years later, right? What's happening? The perfect storm, and I use the word perfect in air quotes, right? You have the pandemic, then you have so a lot of people have lost employment. So a lot of people are home. Then a lot of entertainment has stopped. A lot of people are home. So when these things happened this year in recent months, there were less distractions even for the person that isn't part of the disenfranchised group. So it's getting more attention. And there's also, with social media, in 30 years, things changed a lot, so the exposure to certain things is hard and heavy and fast, right? Then the outrage is not only amongst Black people. I said this before. Actually, I said it on the show we didn't publish, and I'll say it again. The youth, young white people, and young people of all backgrounds are appalled. This is another reason why it's getting more attention. And I think that's actually a good thing that, the youth is so involved, but the timing of it now, continuing with the theme of timing, what did people think was going to happen? Like, if you take people from Africa, separate the fathers from the families, rape the women, kill you do all that, the story. What did you think was going to happen? Why was reading illegal? They didn't want you to get educated, read the Constitution, know the laws, and be able to defend yourself, right? Like, slaves were being bred. 2 big, strong slaves make a big, strong slave, right? Like, so eventually, we got out of slavery. Then you have what happened in the 60s. But just in general, what's happening now, for a person to look at what's happening and to call people animals, why are they burning down their homes? That's your community. Why are you burning? Well, you see what happened in Tulsa, right? You see what happened in Rosewood. When we turn around and have our own, you burn it down. And again, I know it's not that black and white, but what I'm saying is, America gave birth to this climate. I'm gonna say it again. America gave birth to this climate. If a man and a woman get together and they raise a child, and they do drugs in front of the child, and they use profanity in front of the child, and they have violence in front of the child, and the child leaves the house and behaves that way, those parents can't point at the child and say, what the hell is wrong with him? What the hell is wrong with her? This is the result of the sins of this nation. Now, do I want to live anywhere else? No. I want us to fix this shit. People are tired and frustrated. And it's not just Black people. It's any decent people. The funny thing about decency is there are a lot of decent white folk that think, well, that's the past, just. And again, I'm saying decent. Like, there are white people who aren't racist, right? Who don't mistreat anybody, let alone Black people, right? And because they are like that, they probably are surrounded by like-minded white people. So none of their friends are like that. None of their family is like that. As a result, they have Black friends and friends of all backgrounds, and they hang out in these groups. So if you're a decent person and you're living like that, in your day-to-day life, you don't see it, right? So then when you see it on the news, even if it's a few miles from you, it's still not real because you're not living it. You don't perpetuate it. And the Black people in your circle, to your knowledge, don't feel it. So, because I know a lot of good white people who I would trust, right, with my life. They're good people. But we're having these conversations. They're like, well, no. I mean, defiantly, like, no, there's no racism. You're the same as me. I'm the same as you. And it is extremely exhausting trying to explain. And I don't even blame them. Like, some of them are just in denial and don't want to see it. But some of them really can't see it. And I don't, when you, and I don't know if you've done this, Jay, like you didn't do this with me, and I've known you a long time, but when white people, some of them mean well. Some white people mean well when they're texting their black friend or calling their black friend and they want to talk about it. Conversation is good. But I gotta tell you, it is. I normally don't speak for all of anybody, but I'm gonna speak for black people here. It is extremely draining and exhausting to try to explain your life to a white person that can't see it for themselves already. Because a lot of times it's just a feeling. You know, you can point to specific examples, but a lot of times it's like 2 or 3 examples in your lifetime that, right? So then that person responds to you, well, that's only 2 or 3 instances. But then you begin to describe this feeling that you've had countless other times, and then they begin to say to you things like, well, because of those 2 or 3 instances, those feelings you have is paranoia. You're programmed to feel that way, and it's so exhausting. I can't even begin to describe the level of exhaustion. Again, I'm not telling white people not to try to understand. I'm telling you, when you call a black person and you ask them to describe it, and they're having a hard time finding the words, it's just one of those things. It's just very difficult for us. And I know I'm rambling, but you know, this show is about fun. It's about truth. It's largely about relationships, or the relationships that black people have with systemic racism and oppression and violence is a very bad relationship. And I'm not here, you know, and one more thing, and I'll pass it off to you, Jay, for us to close out. One more thing. People hear what they want to hear. I'm going to get an email right after this show. And the email is going to say, you and Jason get along. There's no racism. Then I'm going to get another email. Pat, you're educated. You're doing all right. There's no racism. And I'm going to get another email. What about black on black crime? This is what I'm going to get. These are not the point. Is black on black crime an issue? Yeah. Do Jay and I get along? Yeah. Do I have friends from all kinds of backgrounds? Yeah. Do I get along with all black people? Hell no. None of it has anything to do with anything. We're just talking about blatant violence against unarmed black people. And that's just one subject. So go ahead and send your emails. I love you anyway. I'll respond. But if you send me those emails, I'm telling you from now, you're missing the point. I'm done, Jay.
So I'm going to go back to where you pointed out that I said that we bought it as a collective in terms of Amadou Diallo. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because when I said we bought it, what I mean is that the reaction was tempered because people were willing to accept a system that continually frames things in such a way that social justice does not have to be a priority. That's number one. But number two is the fact that in terms of you and I getting along, Pat, I think that we know this, and why we do Fun and Truth in Black and White as a play on words that our listeners may or may not get. And maybe that's part of the issue here, is that the truth is so gray in terms of how people frame it the way they want to see it. And you said it in terms of the fact that we don't listen. And when we don't listen, we're not just talking about listening to the words coming out of someone's mouth. You're not listening to what is nonverbal communication. You're not listening to what people are really, really doing in terms of their actions. And, your exhaustion towards, white people in terms of them not getting it. And it's not just white people. I think a lot of people of every ethnicity that is not Black don't get it all the time because, again, we're not the ones going through it, number one. But number two is the fact that we feel a need to try and ease the pain for you with our empathy or our own feelings of guilt because we feel helpless and we don't have any control over the situation in our own regard. And that's because this is an economic system that has been put in place for 400 years. And those of us that, really understand it and really understand, what's going on, the question that, we're constantly trying to figure out in our own minds. And, I could even ask you, and I know, it's just an ongoing question, which is, how do we change this system? What can we do differently as people to overcome this constant divide and conquer strategy that is in place? Because that is exactly what it is. You have constant, religious teachings and all sorts of leaders saying that we must unite and come together. I mean, we had a Black president who was talking about the fact that it was time for unity, and just 4 years later, look where we are. He's been out of office for 4 years, and look where we are. And people are saying, well, we should have never let him out and bring him back and all this other stuff. That's not the point. The point is that it's not up to him, it's up to us. And those of us who want to do something about it, we're constantly asking questions, trying to figure out what can we do. And to your point about, people judging you and me, Pat, just for this show, I mean, the idea that we are somehow conquering racial, realities and there's no racism because it's that's I'm going to tell you right now, that's complete bullshit. And I don't give a fuck if people get angry at me for saying that. But number one, part of the reason why we do this show is because we know how much racism really exists, number one, and we're not trying to do the show to, make people feel like, oh, racism doesn't exist. We're trying to do this show to get people to understand that we're human. We make mistakes. We fuck up all the time, especially in relationships, and those relationships don't have to be just intimate relationships, in between, two people. And obviously we focus on male and female relationships, but it could be friends, it could be family. It does not matter what it is that, the relationship is, but whether you're Black or white, the fact that you would put race in front of humanity is part of the problem. And that's where, again, the fun and truth for us is the fact that at least we can have fun with each other in exposing the truth and trying to really, dig into some really, really ugly topics. But tonight's topic, Pat, again, the reason why we said no fun, all truth is because it's tough to have fun with any subject when there's this overarching burden of bullshit that has nothing to do with you or me. It has to do with an economic system that is in place that is trying to divide us and conquer us every single fucking day. And I'm sorry that, I'm getting back to the cursing, but there's nothing else left. You're tired of experiencing it. I'm tired of hearing you say you're fucking tired of experiencing it. I'm tired of hearing this shit. I'm tired of, turning on, any device in the house and having to deal with this reality that, as soon as I walk out the door and I have to face anybody else, it's not just them judging me, it's me judging them, whether I like it or not, because I'm looking at them and I'm saying, what stupid shit is going to come out of your mouth before I even, say hello? So I think that, to wrap it up, we're in a place in history, not just American history, but global history, where we have to really look at the reality of the caste systems, in terms of wealth, in terms of poverty, in terms of skin color, and the fact that less than 0.1% of the world's wealth, okay, is controlled by a handful of people. And those people have no problem with the fact that billions of people are struggling with homelessness, with hunger, and just not living as real human beings. And those of us out here, we're doing what we can with what we have, but we accept the system, and that's what we're buying, Pat. We're buying the system. So, Hello or Jacob Blake, we're buying the system right now, man.
Yeah, I know I'll keep saying we're going to wrap this up. I really encourage you, the listener, to now more than ever, think for yourself. There's no strings on your back, but there's buttons being pressed. Fuck this race war that is being perpetuated. Fuck that, man. Like, pick what side you want to be on. Like, I'm not getting on a side of any group that's going to go after white people and fight them and hurt them. And you shouldn't get on a side that does that either. Look, it's going to break down like this. There's going to be, because people are sheep, man. People will just do what they're being told to do subliminally or break through that. They want you to hate your neighbor. Say, fuck that. Say, my neighbor didn't do anything to me. Or if you don't like your neighbor for the shit they did to you, which chances are has nothing to do with their skin color. Jay, for those that don't know, other than you being white, state aloud your exact demographic, not your age, but like the exact background of your parents and yourself and your grandparents.
English, German, and Russian. Obviously the Russian is Jewish, and I was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Okay, now, there's an English, German, Russian, Jewish person born in Brooklyn that you won't be able to stand. Like, you would have everything in common with them on paper, and you would get in a room with them, and you or them might walk out the room like, I'm never talking to that person ever again.
Yeah.
Like, you can have everything in common with them, and they can't stand you, and you can't stand them.
Yeah. Just have to talk in the mirror.
You might meet somebody with nothing in common with you, and you either get along great or you get along neutral.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not that complicated. And I'm not trying to paint a picture of some fake utopia. Like, I'm not stupid. I know what's going on, but there's a lot of good people out here. And you want to know why? It's because they were taught properly. You see, the hardest thing, I know I'm going over, Jay, but fuck it. The hardest thing in the world is to change your programming. I'm lucky enough, my parents didn't preach any hate. So had they preached hate, then for me to change as an adult, I would have to like unlearn all that bullshit and go seek the truth. So, you know how it is, like infants in a playpen or in a sandbox, they're just gonna play until somebody comes over and says, you shouldn't like him because he's Chinese. You shouldn't like her because she's white, and all that other bullshit. It's all taught. No child is born hating anybody. So again, the same analogy with America. If you want to look at why people are behaving a certain way, why don't you look at yourself, asshole? Like, no child is born hating. A kid might be born not liking string beans, or they can't, like, they have an allergy or some shit. That's different. No child is born a racist. It's taught behavior.
Yeah,
So that's another thing. Like, so you parents out there that are teaching your kids the same bullshit that you were taught. And you know what? Even if you were raised that way, by now you gotta know it's bullshit. I'm starting to get upset all over again, but it's so fucking annoying, man. Like, it's taught. It is taught behavior.
It's not just taught, Pat, but it's fed to us through every media outlet there is. And this, let me just, sort of hit this note. And if it resonates, it does. If it doesn't, I tried. Again, going back to the system and the fact that what we're really struggling here with is valuing each other and valuing ourselves. And it really starts with ourselves. So when you said that there's, somebody in Brooklyn that's just like me, it starts with looking in the mirror and how you value yourself. If you value yourself in a positive way, in a meaningful way, then regardless of, what somebody's about, you might be able to find a positive with them. And Pat, you know me, I'm always trying to find the positive. I'm always trying to find a result that, people can, get some value out of. And that's really what I think I'm trying to, share, with the time I have left on air tonight, is that it's really about having better values with yourself so that you can have them with other people. And this gets back to what we're really about with Fun and Truth, is that it's identifying and understanding, regardless of how you were raised, regardless of the shit you went through as a kid, we all have our inner child issues. We all have, the wounded, things that our parents didn't give us, or we went through if we didn't have parents, if we had a fucked up situation, if our parents, one of them or both of them left us, if we were given up for adoption. Listen, I don't know what your struggle is. And I'm talking to every listener out there. I don't know what your struggle is, but I know that if you're an adult, every one of us has been through some shit. And it's about how you value yourself first, regardless of whether you went through shit or not, doesn't matter. But I'm going to assume that everybody did. And the reality is, you have to recognize that that's what makes you human. We all go through our shit. We all make our mistakes. But at some point, you have to recognize that you were put on this earth for a purpose, regardless of whether you think it's valuable or not. You have to realize that you have value just by waking up in the morning and being able to do something with your day and contribute in some way. And that is where we have to get. We have to get to that place where all of us value ourselves and value each other and realize that we are all in this together. That this, this experiment, this human experiment that we're a part of, we've got to get past the divide and conquer, because again, this is our planet. Doesn't matter what the fuck the, super rich elite people are doing in terms of building spaceships and going to Mars and all this shit. You want to be one of those people? Be my guest. I don't have a problem with you if you want to get the fuck off this planet, but until you can, you're stuck here. And if you don't like your fellow human being, that means you don't like yourself.
Yeah, well said. And here I go again, bringing up another subject. And you know what? Forgive me, listeners, for going over, but we'll get back to our normal format next week. Another thing that bothers me. So first, on any subject, anybody who knows me, or now the listeners know me well, I very rarely, if ever, speak in absolutes. I don't use words like every or all. Once a statement starts with that, unless we're talking about math, it's an incorrect statement, right? So a person's sample space is a factor. People sometimes will meet X amount of people from a certain demographic, certain group, certain race. And if perchance their experience with X amount of people of said group were all bad experiences, they come to a very broad conclusion. I'm here to tell you that's very dangerous. If you've never met a person from a certain culture and you meet that person robs you or wrongs you or is not trustworthy, or you don't like their hygiene or how they live, or you have to be very careful not to form generalizations in your mind. Even if it's 15 people, even if it's 150, there's millions of that group on Earth. Now, I'm not crazy. If you have dealt with hundreds of people that, generally speaking, are of similar background, and if there's a common thread through your experiences, of course it's going to affect you. I mean, when you meet the 201st person of that group, naturally, because you have a memory, you're going to draw on your previous experiences. That is what makes people prejudiced. You prejudge based on a situation. I'm here to tell you that it's a natural thing to do, and it doesn't make you a bad person. You can prejudge based on your experience, even if not intentionally. You might naturally do that. But even that shouldn't stop you from giving the 201st person of that group a chance. Now, if that person ends up being unlike the first 200, now you have to be careful about saying the following. That group is bad, but this guy is different. He's the exception. That's the other trap, right? And you have to be careful. Now, it might sound like a lot of work, but we're all human, right? Like, we all make mistakes. So again, people are more reasonable than you might think. If you find, or even to yourself, if you find yourself making generalizations and then meeting someone that you get along with and separating them, that's wrong. And maybe you might play that in your head and you check yourself. Or maybe you might go to your friend that looks like you and say, hey, I met such and such. He's not like the rest. Maybe your friend, if they love you and care about you, and if they're not an idiot, maybe they'll be like, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't even think that, because for all you know, the next 200 might be like the cool one, right? So you have to be very, very careful. And I'm not saying not to live your life, and I'm not saying not to be free. I'm saying at least give it thought, right? Give it thought, and you might be a better person tomorrow. That's it. And if everybody just does that, we will still have problems. But there'll be an aura of respect. And from that aura, being civil is possible. That's it. And I'm not asking for a lot because I live it. This is what I do, right? I don't, if I die tomorrow, knock wood, there's gonna be a lot of people, well, maybe a few that like, we ain't like them anyway. I don't get along with everybody, but generally speaking, even the people that I don't get along with, no one can say that I mistreated them. They didn't have it coming to them. And the only way you had it coming to them is if you shit on me. And if you shit on me, you shit on me because you shit on me. I don't blame the fact that you shit on me on how you look. Look, man, that's all I got to say. And the premise of this, you notice we didn't really do it like other outlets. We didn't get into statistics and we didn't get into the systemic part of it. Jay and I came at you, no fun, all truth on decency and interacting with others.
Yeah. Let me just wrap up by saying, this is an episode in which the title is No Fun, All Truth, but I think we wound up getting to at least a positive. And, if we could leave it with our listeners, on that positive, I think it's really asking the question of how do you respect yourself and respect others in this current crisis? And I call it a crisis because we're facing challenges with health. We're facing challenges with our school systems. We're facing challenges with our employment system. We're facing challenges with our government. We're facing challenges with law enforcement. There's a lot right now that we're facing challenges with, and our relationships with each other are more stressed than ever because of everything going on. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, how do we value ourselves and how do we respect ourselves so we can respect others? And I hope that you can find the positives, just one, if any, which is that you're lucky to wake up in the morning and be able to make an impact. And I hope that it's a positive one. All right, man.
Man, I'm glad we got this off.
Yeah.
And we will get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Same bat time, same bat channel, right? For all you Batman fans out there. But really, though.
Right, with Pat and Jay. And
listen, Jay, I got to say it again. When our listeners get a load, pun intended, of the responses we got from that WAP episode.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have a ball, man. Join us for the party next week.
We already have the title. We're gonna let the audience know, the listeners know that the title for our next episode is From WAP to SAP.
But Jay, we're not going to tell them what the acronym means.
SAP is, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Listen, everybody, peace and love. Thank you for listening.
All right.